We are live, Paul.
We are.
Yeah. Welcome, everybody, to the Divine Roots podcast. We had a little bit of trouble getting started this morning, and yet here we are.
Perseverance, is that the word?
I think so, yeah. Today we're talking about gain and loss, how to deal with prosperity and hardship. And what's interesting is Paul and I did some of our own research separate from one another, and he brought something up this morning, and I said, wow, that's exactly what I was thinking from my point of view as well. So I'd like you to start off here, Paul. So you began by saying the words gain and loss are very interesting. You want to talk into that a little bit?
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to this interesting ride. And yes, gain and loss is a very interesting two words. There are the same side of a coin, if you will. They represent a very important, you could say, very, very important points in our lives, okay, where we constantly want to gain something, and when loss comes, it's very hard for us because it represents death. Okay, so the ego is involved in this as well. So we turn to the universe, we turn to God when we want to gain something, when we want to achieve something. A lot of us turn to the universe through prayer, meditation, or in some other way. God, please help us. I want this job. Or God, please, I'm in love with this girl. Help us out. And what happens with that? Expectations come in. And then eventually when the expectations come in, we get disappointed with loss because it's never going to be what we expect usually. And we get disappointed, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So, and this is a part of life that we're always going to be on this roller coaster of sorts, where things are going to go our way. Life is not designed to be easy; it's not supposed to be. And so, you're either in a battle. You just got out of a battle, or you're about to go into a battle, is usually the case in most people's lives.
We complicate our lives ourselves because we constantly think there's something missing in our lives. We constantly think that if I get this car or house, I'll be happier. And when we get there, we feel a sense of loss because we're not complete. We feel empty still. Something's missing. So it's once again the battle with the ego. The ego says, okay, you want to be happy, buddy? Go get that Mercedes or get that car. You want to be happy? Go get that house or get married on this and that. And when you achieve those things and you still feel a void inside of you, something's missing, that loss, and you're like, what's going on? Why am I felt like this is the right way for me to be happy, to gain, and I feel a loss instead, let's say. And it's super important to not allow, like you said, that roller coaster, not allow it to affect us. We just have to be more of in the acceptance and allowing mode. The only thing we actually are, we have free will. Number one, free will, what we have is our reaction to life, our reactions. That's number one. So when we do have the loss, how we react to it. Okay, so when we praying for or trying to get to a certain level, so gain something, and then we don't achieve it, or we do achieve it and still feel we lost something, something's missing, accepting and allowing and moving on. Otherwise, there's an inner battle, inner conflict constantly with what's inside of you, your soul and the ego, constant battle inside. So those two are the main programs of the ego to drive us bananas. Okay, one of those two. And guess what is the root cause of all those two is fear. Once again, the fears behind all this. Loss represents death, any type of loss.
Yeah.
Inside of us represents death. And what do we fear most is death. And the ego fears it the most. It says, oh, if you lose something, that means you failed, a piece of you died, and that just makes you feel very uncomfortable. And I'm talking, if you think about somebody close to you passes, let's say. I don't know if any of you had that experience where somebody very close to you passed away. And that moment feels completely devastating, because the ego, it's a reminder that our life is very short, and there is an ending to the physical body. And the consciousness moves on, the soul moves on, but the physical body has a beginning and an end. And that's a reminder that we are going to have to face that one day. So once again, it's an interesting two words.
Yeah, and you talk about how the two words actually end up coming together, almost meaning the same thing. I had an interesting experience. What actually drew me to Jesus Christ and my faith was February 2nd, 2018, the day I woke up. I experienced something. A friend of ours lost his son, which, as you mentioned, perhaps the biggest travesty that we would all fear, maybe, is the loss of one of our kids. And so I did the normal sending out to him the condolences, and I'm so sorry, if there's anything I can do, and watching this man, his reaction to his son dying was what drew me to God, because I watched him go through my greatest fear with nothing but gratitude and love and praise for his God, his Savior, for the experience of his son. And I thought to myself, wow, whatever Wheaties this guy's eating, I want to eat some of those. And I already knew, because I knew the person, where his faith was coming from, how his grounding was coming from. And that's what drew me in. It got me curious. And so since that day, I've been listening and reading the Bible every morning, and it had a profound life-changing effect on my life. And so it's interesting, because it goes back to the perspective of, here's the loss, but in some ways, I've found a way to, and I'm not saying like it wouldn't be hard, or it hasn't been hard. Like we lost a baby before it was born, which was very hard for us, because it was pretty far along. So there, it's not like it's ever going to be easy, but I've sort of gone through the process of already pre-grieving, like the letting go process of the things that I thought were, I was holding on to so deeply, realizing that it's all going to be fading away at some point. And it was a very freeing experience to go through that.
Yes. And my wife doesn't like when I say this, but we cannot have attachments to anything in this world, because it has beginning and an end, this specific world, this reality. And when we have attachments, and we allow those attachments to influence us in any way, happy way or sad way, we're on that roller coaster ride. And our whole point is to get more of a neutral, emotionally neutral. And that's when we actually not on a roller coaster anymore. So we are like an observer from the sideline. And we don't allow these emotions to put us in a very dark place. So I
have a question about that. So, according to your understanding, we have these obstacles and things that come in our way that are teachers, right? And they come down to teach us something. And we have a body that feels, And so my question to you would be, wouldn't there be something we're supposed to learn from feeling fully, from, say, loving completely a wife, children, giving yourself completely into that feeling all the way, even though you know that there's a possibility that you might lose it at some point?
I love that question. We attract people or beings or energies that will help us grow. So your wife, your kids, your scenario, your whole environment, you attract and you create for your own growth. So let's say your wife attracted you, you attracted your wife, and you both grow. And the whole point is to get to understanding and feeling of unconditional love, not conditional love. Unfortunately, human beings lost the meanings of the words. When they say love my kids, love my wife, when back in the day when that word was said, love, people felt emotion, that unconditional love, that whoever experienced it, they will understand it. It's not, this is above this reality, above this worldly understanding, above the five senses that the body feels. It's on a different level.
So are you saying that we are not capable of, as humans, of truly experiencing unconditional love, or we are capable, but most people aren't doing it?
We are capable. It's just what happened, we forgot. We went into a deep sleep, and we are experiencing this life through the ego, meaning through the program that we believe that's us, our personality. Instead of experiencing this reality from the essence, the divine essence, who we are, and experiencing it through that, we experiencing it through a avatar, let's call it, or a vessel, through the five senses, saying, okay, my name is Matt, I have a wife, I have kids, and that's who I am, and this is how I have to show my full love. And so when we put labels, we limit love, will limit everything, because we have a label. And what I'm presenting, or what I felt, you cannot put any label, and our language is so limited. And when we put labels, it's impossible to describe the true unconditional love. It's impossible to describe the true beauty of, let's call it, other worlds or other expressions of the universe or God. It's almost impossible to describe. So that's the level we want to get to, and that's internal with you, with your relationship with you, with your source, right? When that happens, your relationship external with your wife and kids changes. You see them in a different light, from a different angle. The love, the word love changes its meaning. Your emotions change. Why? Because when you experience divine love, the other senses start to get active in you. Other senses, the other spiritual organs, let's call them, right, start to activate. So we are capable. But unfortunately, human beings became instinctual out of fear, out of conditioning, out of all types of, I like to call them negative limiting programs, identities that we have, that we identify with. We limit our experiences. That's why we only have a certain way of expressing our love for our kids and our wife. We think that we are giving our all. But when you don't understand what it means to love yourself and have a relationship with yourself first, how can we have a relationship with anybody else? So our relationship with ourselves, loving ourselves, understanding who we are, why we're here first, And then when we look at our wife, when we look in her eyes and say, wow, this person is with me on this journey. There is no word love could describe it. This is a completely different feeling. Intimacy, completely different feeling. Everything, creating life, completely different feeling. You start to understand it on a different level when you develop that other spiritual organ and you start feeling it and experiencing life through the other spiritual filter. And it's hard, very hard to explain into words, almost impossible.
And you've experienced this personally?
I have. And that's what changed my life.
And so through that, what was the response from the people who you love or who are close to you?
It was very difficult for me because I had to adapt, because people who, and a lot of people do experience it. I had experienced it on a very long level, kind of like duration, let's say. And then I had to come down here and I had to learn, how can I share this feeling with people that their cup is so limited and I have so much to fill the cup with, but they cannot grasp it. It's just coming out of the cup and they cannot understand or feel it. So I said to myself, it was a long time. It was 7-8 years of me suffering, and unfortunately of my wife suffering as well, and everybody, my mom and my family suffering, because I had to recalibrate my own understanding of this reality, because I came down from up there here and I said, wow, what a difference. We are in a stone age in our feelings and understanding. This is I gotta share this, and nobody understood. Everybody thought of me as a psycho, right? This guy is crazy. He became a robot. This guy doesn't understand what's going on. He doesn't love anybody, and it's complete opposite. So it was a very difficult time for adjustment. And I said to myself, I will find a way to adjust and keep my family. And I will find a way to stretch that cup for every individual that I meet. I will find that way to fill as much of that essence from above as I can for every individual. Open up their hearts as much as I can and give them that, what I experienced, at least to a 0.5% level. If I could get them there, I achieved my goal in life. So yes, it was difficult. And my wife and my kids, my relationship changed with them in a better way. And their relationship towards me changed in a better way. It was a long road, though, 7-8 years for me to, it's like reboot. But it took 7-8 years just to readjust. It was a long road.
It's interesting you say that. I had a very similar experience with my awakening, and it was years. And you were a big part of that too. I want to give you credit, because as I was adapting and changing, you were helping me in other ways, in spiritual ways that I was curious about and hungry for. But as I got closer to Jesus and my understanding there, what I remember very specifically, I had a conversation with my wife, and I was doing things I had never done before, loving in ways I had never loved before, and thinking in ways I had never thought before, and it wasn't surface level. It was so much deeper than that. And I sat down and I looked at my wife and I said, I'm sorry, because I understand I'm not the man you married, but I'm not changed. This is now me. This is who I'm going to be. And I'm going to love you no matter what. And I want this for you. I want you to feel this. And it was a painful road. It was painful for her to hear that. It was hard for her to understand that I was in a different place. But now through that painful road, when we get to the other side, I can't even describe the difference in our marriage and in our home and the way that we can flawlessly interact. And I have this saying, when you change, the people around you change, or the people around you change. And like you, I was like, oh, I don't want, my wife, I don't want this to change. But truthfully, it's her choice, of course. She's not buckled to the house. She had to decide, hey, I want this in my life too. And we got to grow together. And it's interesting too, as far as the idea of marriage, where God says in the Bible, it is good. And also it is best to be alone. Right? But if you find a companion, and he made Eve out of Adam type thing, and said, hey, this is for you. And then they sin together, they go down to heaven to grow together, and then they keep making mistakes over and over again. But then even Jesus says, yeah, this is good. A man should be with a woman like this. This is a good thing. And Paul says, man should be with a woman. However, what's best would be to be like me, Paul says, to be single, so that you can give all of you to God. That's best. But if you can't do that, next best thing, get married, because you'll have this companion with you.
Paul says, always be single with, have a relationship with you, but have a wife and have kids, because they're the best teachers. So I'm not saying don't give them love, don't give your all. I'm just saying that in order for us to be the best for them, we first have to understand who we are ourselves, our identity, true identity, not what the ego of society or somebody else said, gave us a name and this and that, but figuring out, going within and figuring out who we are truly. Now, again, going back to gain and loss, over time we gain a lot of information and our cup gets full. In order for us to get new insight, new information, the old stuff has to die. The old stuff has to be reset, removed, in order for new to come in. And that's the only way to grow. That's the only way to grow. And accepting and allowing. So, unfortunately, in a relationship, acceptance and allowing is a big thing, or control. So, we have to accept ourselves. That's number one, who we are, right? Accept.
Yeah.
And then we're going to accept our partner as they are, not going to try to change them.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
So all that is super important. But we go into relationships with expectations, gaining something. We think we're going to gain love, we're going to gain, let's say, intimacy, we're going to have a kid with always expectation. Oh, she's beautiful, I'm going to have beautiful kids, with this and that. And when we have expectations, we will be disappointed in some way every time. And that's where hardship and loss and difficulty comes in. So if we stop expecting and just being allowing when we stop expectations and we're just going to be allowing, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And accepting whatever comes our way, it's a lot easier to live. Like a river flow.
Mm.
Make sense?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. So I have a few Bible verses I wrote down here that I thought would be kind of fun to go through. And this was my perspective on the idea
Mm-hmm.
of the gain and loss being the same, because as I was looking at verses on both sides, it's like, really, these almost mean the same thing. But right back to what you were just saying, I found this one interesting here. This is Romans 14:8. If we live for the Lord. And if we die for the Lord. So whether we live or die, we belong to the Lord. And living and dying is gain and loss. And it is this the idea of the prosperity and the hardship. It's they're one and the same. It's sort of like you go through one, you get the other, and then as soon as you get the other, you're probably going to go through this again. And so to understand that and to center yourself into God, into Spirit Source, that's where you can truly live and be wealthy in spirit.
And when we find that essence within us and build the temple within us, right? From rock, right? As they say, within us, when we find that relationship, understand who we are and our relationship, let's say with the Lord or the universe, who everybody has different names. You will see that in every human being, and you're not going to identify with their ego or personality or how they look. You're going to penetrate that veil, and
Right.
you're going to look inside, and then your relationship with your wife, your kids changes. You see them on a divine level. And then that love that we think, like, oh, you love me. It's all been, you could say, through the grinder. All the meaning, all the true feeling of love is gone. It's only a small little speck left that human beings think what love means. And that's why we have such a big problem in the world today between relationships, marriages, governments, institutions in general, because that is missing. Everybody is looking at each other and judging on the external through the five senses, that other and instinctual, like animalistic more instinct, based on their own personal filters, fears, past traumas. That's how the world is living, instead of looking through completely neutral filter, that unconditional love that comes through above, from within you. That makes sense?
Absolutely. All right, I have another verse here that reminds me of you. This is John 14:27. Peace I leave you, my peace I give you. I do not give you as the world gives. Do not let your hearts be troubled, and do not be afraid.
That's a good one.
Right? And I know from being around you and getting to experience life as one of your friends on this journey, that this verse is at the heart, the essence of what you teach and how you help people to release fears and to try to live at peace, and to understand that his peace he's already given to you. You just have to accept that, and he's giving to you in a way that the world doesn't, you can't give you. It's different, right?
100%. When you're born with an A, everything complete. But then we pick up this world's fears, doubts, all types of ancestral stuff that's still not worked out through your DNA. It passes down, and you have to kind of try to find that peace that God is, that the verse is talking about, that inner peace that's there. But we run away from our own selves because of fear. It's easier that way. I'd rather go into hiding. I'd rather do the same mistakes over and over than change. I'd rather do the same thing, same habits and addictions over and over than change. We run away. And why can I be at peace? Well, because you're running away. The peace is there. It's always been with you. You know, let's say heaven is always there. Heaven on earth is always there. It's all about your the state of being. You could be in hell, sitting in that chair, feeling horrible, depressed, uncomfortable, full of fear. Or you could be full of courage, love, and connected with your inner self, knowing who you are, connected with Source, full of unconditional love. That's heaven on earth. But the reflection, what we see, what's happening now, is people's, the mass consciousness, the bigger picture. People are fearful. That's why we still have all these issues. Fear is taken over. Hopefully that makes sense.
It does make sense. And what's interesting is both the verses I brought up thus far, or all of them thus far, were all in the loss category.
Mm-hmm.
But all of them have the flip, automatic. I mean, that you can look at that and say, oh, that actually belongs in the gain and prosperity. I like this proverb, 3:5-6 says, trust in the Lord with all your heart and do not lean on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him and he will straighten your paths. Again, it's going inward.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to God and trusting and allowing the allowance, as you say, allowing him to guide and lead your life.
Mm-hmm. All the ancient traditions, all the modern traditions, all speak of there's a little piece of God in you. He put a little bit in him. He touched here, he touched here. Every tradition has a different thing, but there's a little bit piece of God in you. 100% correct. The problem is human beings like to put all of their attention into this game of life, external. Whatever you're putting attention to, that's where all of your energy goes. Instead of going within. Instead of actually going within and actually saying, you know what? I do have piece of, it's like a drop of the ocean, drop of the universe, drop of God in me. Why don't I get that growing inside of me?
And I think that's where some of the people who don't understand what you do think that's where you lose some people. And I want to clarify and want to make sure I'm right about this, because I think that I know your perspective slightly. I don't think you think you're a God or the God, but you believe that God lives in you and through you. Is that correct?
Every human being, not just me.
Correct.
Yes.
Correct.
So what we need to do, it's like a little seed. What I'm suggesting is for you to cultivate that seed inside of you. And that when it blooms, you will feel that unconditional love within you. And that bloom will touch other lives. And it's like a huge fire in the middle of the forest. Everybody is going to want to come and see it and take a little bit for themselves and grow and help others. And that's how automatically we help ourselves and others around us. And that's how my understanding of a family, your wife and kids, get benefit. Yeah, at the beginning, they don't like me. I'm a robot. I'm cold. I'm a crouton.
I don't think they ever, my wife and kids ever didn't like you.
Yeah, but I'm just saying that I do get off that way. But I said to myself, at first I will understand how I could bring and help them, whatever I felt I want them to feel eventually. And at the beginning, they might not understand, but the benefits will be there.
Based on what you just said, this is the last verse I'll say today. I have like 100 written down, but this is the last one. This is Luke 6:38. Give and you will receive. Your gift will return to you in full, pressed down, shaken together to make room for more, running over and poured into your lap. The amount you give will determine the amount you get back. It's almost exactly what you're saying, is filling your own cup, taking care of you, going inward, knowing self, so that you have more to give. And as you give, more people are going to come, and they're going to feed off that. They're going to want it. And the more you give, the more you're going to receive, because you have to be full to help more people. Yes?
Correct. Unfortunately, the biggest mistakes everybody does, they go out, they want to change the world. Leo Tolstoy actually said, it's very interesting. He says, everybody wants to change the world, but nobody wants to change themselves. It starts from individual. We have to help ourselves first, not external person. You have to do the work. The external forces might just guide you, but the work has to be done by you. You want change. Change means death. It's scary. But for you to go in and take your flashlight within, it's scary. And I understand it takes courage, but it's necessary for a human being to go into that wilderness and to find that little flower, that seed, and start cultivating it for their own benefit and for the benefit of the whole. No matter what tradition, no matter what culture you're from, all the cultures speak of that. Cultivating your inner strength, your inner power that was gifted by the universe. That's in you. That's how you started. Human beings are capable. Everybody is capable. It just takes work and courage and a lot of love for yourself and others.
That's a good place for us to end today.
I agree.
So to wrap it up, this podcast was about gain and loss, how to deal with prosperity and hardships, knowing that they're a part of life, both what we would call the good and the bad, but actually they're one and the same. So how to deal with it is to move back, separate from what we think might be this big gain or loss, and understand that it's part of this life. It's a part of what we're supposed to learn while we're here. And when we see it that way, it can bring us peace, and we can actually live a full life, full of happiness, full of joy, which is a lack of fear. And that's our goal, is to get to that place of not being fearful as we walk through this life.
Yes. Not believing in the noise of your mind. Do not buy into the noise of the mind, but find that little temple within you, that temple of peace that was always there, temple of flowers, beauty, and unconditional love. That's your healing temple. That's within you. And when you get there, it's just an amazing feeling that you feel, and you could share it with other people.
Well, thank you, Paul. Thanks for your time today. I appreciate you being here. So it's been a great podcast. Remind people, how can they find you to find more of your work or to work with you personally?
They could go to wisdominyou.com and they could contact me through there, and we could work one-on-one. Anybody who's interested in this type of work, I'll make time for them.
Great. All right. Well, thanks.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.